It's having belief and trust in your own ability. You've got to have that to allow yourself to be aggressive and to take on an opponent. Batting at the top when the field's up, we all want to get off to quick starts. There'll be times where you just throw caution in the wind and be overly aggressive. The game's about hitting the ball.
Best player I played with, I'd have to say Adam Gilchrist.
Gilly was, wow, with a capital W.
To come in at number 7 was a luxury no other team had.
Absolutely blitzing and counter-attacking.
Aggressive, typical Australian.
It wasn't just the number of runs he got, but also the manner in which he got them.
He played Test cricket like we played beach cricket.
He reduced bowlers to the roles of sort of clowns and entertainers.
They were terrified because they knew that he was just unstoppable.
And he just did it so effortlessly. It looked like he was having so much fun.
His keeping was always overshadowed by his batting.
Fantastic wicketkeeper.
And that's why he's so damn good.
The first time I saw Adam Gilchrist, he was a sort of a middling batsman who didn't appear to have the resilience or the technique to survive at the top level.
I'm sure he's probably a batsman that kept a bit, as against a keeper that batted.
My memory of him is that he just hit a really sweet ball. You know, those personalities that just, the timing just seems to be there and the ball just seemed to come off that little extra harder.
I knew him a bit before I played for Australia in New South Wales. We made our debut for New South Wales the same game.
6 games, batted 3, averaged 23.
He was always going to struggle to be the keeper for New South Wales because Phil Emery was well and truly entrenched there.
Well, I'd be probably remembered more for dropping him out of the team. We had a guy called Phil Emery in the squad who I felt was a better keeper at the time.
I was having a beer with the chairman of selector, Steve Bernard. I said, I've got one favour, and just one favour only. Please, please don't burn Adam Gilchrist. Please don't burn this kid, because he is the bomb.
He could have played first class and Test cricket as a batsman alone, but the fact that he was a keeper as well, and he wanted to keep, meant that he'd have to go somewhere else.
They let him go. Amazingly.
My dropping him probably led him to a decision which I think was the very, very best thing for all concerned.
That decision for Adam Gilchrist meant considering an offer from the other side of Australia, 4,000 kilometres away in Perth.
I went to my sources in Sydney and said, well, what about this guy Gilchrist? He's a good guy, you know, he can play obviously, and he can keep, and this is what we want. And they said, no, you'd be taking on a really great guy if you were able to get Adam Gilchrist across.
He had to move himself to Western Australia and unseat a popular incumbent there in Tim Zura.
I still remember that first one-day match for WA. Gilly looked extremely nervous. The media had been giving him a hard time because Tim Zura was a Western Australian champion. He played for Australia. He was much loved in Western Australia, and suddenly we had this blue bagger coming over and taking his place. So I remember when Gilly walked out to bat, he copped a fearful serve from the crowd, you know, his new home crowd. But knowing Gilly, it only took a couple of his vintage performances and suddenly he was WA's favourite son, and you know, he'd been West Australian all his life.
I think we all thought he was going to be a very good player, but not the genius that he turned out to be.
The thing that creates a role for him is opening batsman in one-day cricket. Australia begins to look at potential players who can give it that extra dimension in one-day cricket. And one day Steve Waugh has the intuition to offer him the opportunity to go in first in a one-day international. He actually does it at the tea interval.
I still remember sitting in the change room, 20 minutes to go before we went out to bat. Tom Moody was padded up with my brother Mark to open the batting, and I was eating my ice cream and I just thought, this is not right, Gilchrist should open. And I went over to Adam and I said, look, you know, I want you to go out there and open and just play your natural game, don't think too much about it and just go for it. He put his pads on, Tom took them off, and I guess history was changed from that moment on.
He's the perfect player for that role, and that has the sense that I think builds his confidence as an international cricketer.
In 1999, Gilchrist was an integral part of the Australian side that travelled to England for the World Cup. His 54 off 36 balls in the final against Pakistan helped Australia secure their first World Cup victory in 12 years. Steve Waugh's gamble was paying off. It seemed the next logical step for Australia's one-day opener and wicketkeeper was Test cricket.
There's been a lot of speculation and a lot of support. Hopefully I will be drawn out, but I just have to wait and see.
I think everyone that knew he was destined to play for Australia in Test match cricket at some stage.
Australia had one of the best keepers of all time in Ian Healy, performing very strongly behind the stumps, doing incredibly well. And I suppose it was just it got to a point the selectors felt that the Australian team was going to be better with Adam behind the stumps than Ian.
Australia would not have to wait long to see Adam Gilchrist in full flow with the bat. He dazzled on his Test debut against Pakistan in November 1999.
Smashed that. I said the crowd certainly are loving this. 5 balls, 4 boundaries this over.
He's found the gap again, so it's 5 from 6.
Pretty sure he made 80 in his first innings in Brisbane, if I can recall correctly.
That's his 50. Not a bad Test debut.
Yet again, he had won over his fiercest critics, and Australian cricket had a new hero.
Oh, what a good shot.
That second Test match against Pakistan in Belree, I think that suddenly dispelled everybody's doubts about this person as a Test cricketer.
Adam Gilchrist is the new batsman, and Pakistan bowling themselves into a wonderful position here.
I remember he walked out, I don't know the exact stats, but he came out at drinks on the 4th day and we were gone. Like Pakistan had Shakleen Mushtaq, Wazam Akram, Shoaib Akhtar.
That's a good shot.
And we were 5 for 100 chasing through, we were gone.
Then he and Langer took away the match from us, and that time Waqar, Wasim, they were all in good form.
And by the time we walked off at stumps an hour later, I'd been batting for 2 or 3 hours for 40, and an hour later I was on 50 and he was on 53 or something. He's a freak, seriously. He makes people like me sick, Gilly. Like, he's that good.
Forward, that one short and hit the way beautifully.
Look, Gilly is special. Coming at number 7 and scoring a century, you know, it kills you. It really kills you, especially in a Test match when you start feeling that, okay, we are through now, 6 batsmen gone. A man comes in and get 100 and demolishes you.
Straight down the ground, that'll be it. What a beautiful shot. It's running away down towards the deep, long-off boundary. Into the fence it goes, and that is a superb century.
He was a person that was able to craft out a match-winning innings, us chasing down 360 odd to win a Test match.
That is it. That is the winning run. The Australians have pulled off what I think is one of the finest victories I've ever seen in Test cricket.
He just fell into that role as counter-punching number 7 and wicketkeeper like a penny into a slot, and he was the first name picked on every team sheet thereafter.
Gilchrist's impact in Test cricket could not have been more dramatic. Following his debut, the team went on a world record 16-match winning streak. Australia's wrecking ball in the middle order was the final piece in the jigsaw in creating one of the all-time great sides.
I think he did give Australian cricket another dimension at that time. He just played cricket totally according to his own lights in an almost completely intuitive and uncoached fashion.
Guys like myself and Ricky Ponting and Mike Hussey, we're cricket tragics. You know, we wanted our cricket bats. We play with our cricket bats and we'd swap cricket bats and have, you know, Gilly had come and you'd give Gilly this microphone stand, he'd go and make 100 with that. He wouldn't care less what he used. You know, he couldn't care less.
And here we go. 6 more, folks.
To have him psychologically at number 7 crippled opposition.
They'd have us 5 down for 250, 5 down for 300, and in walks Gilly and just goes out there and plays real positive cricket.
If he batted for half an hour to an hour, you knew he was either going to take the game away from the opposition or bring us back into the game.
Mike Atherton tells this great story about playing against Gilchrist in the 2001 Ashes. And Athers looked over at Duncan Fletcher's notebook and he had notes on all of the Australian players about how England was planning to counteract them. And against Gilchrist's name, there's simply a question mark. There was no obvious way to counteract him.
He was the kind of bloke who, as a captain, you dreaded because he'd come in at number 7 and you'd just take the game away from you.
He smashed us all around the park. And I remember setting the field back to try and keep him off strike, but he would take fielders on in the deep. He hit the ball so hard, he took the aerial route. He'd come out playing in a one-day mode. He seemed to just have no fear of failure.
He had this exceptional ability just to play with that complete freedom. You know, I do give opposition a chance to get me out, but in a sense, I think I can get you before you get me.
And then there was one double hundred he scored, I think, against South Africa when people were talking about how weak he was against the second new ball and all of that. He comes in and smashed maybe 150 ball, 200 or something like that. It's ridiculous to watch him at times.
Extraordinary innings because he was under real pressure too.
I'll tell you what, not far from the go for gold sign.
I still remember there was something on the scoreboard, a big gold bullion. If you hit that, you got $1 million or $100,000, whatever it was, and he kept it. Mate, but he missed by about that much. It was like he was aiming at it.
There he goes again. Don't worry about this one. Is it going to get the gold sign? It must have just missed.
Seemed like he's that good. There's a target up there, and wherever they're going to bowl it, I'm going to keep smacking up there because I'm just going to show you how good I am, you know.
In a sense, there was just no more dismaying sight than him coming in at 5 for 400 because you knew you were in for some awful leather chasing.
Short, pulled away, and that's the 200. What an innings.
Did you attack Gilchrist? Did you defend? Did you bowl spin against him? Did you bowl pace? Because he just seemed to make up his own rules.
And I often ask Gilly about coaching. I said, Gilly, come and do some coaching for us at the WACA or the Australian. He goes, but I don't know what to say. What am I going to say? I don't know. I don't know how I do it. I just do it, mate. He's also a brilliant wicket keeper too. Everyone talks about his batting. Brilliant wicket keeper.
He's caught it! That is a magnificent catch by Gilchrist.
Yeah, he went a long way towards changing the perception of a wicket-keeper and what his role was.
There's the edge and there's the glove.
I think thereafter it became impossible to pick a wicket-keeper solely on the basis of their wicket-keeping prowess.
Nowadays, it's very rare if you see just a great wicketkeeper who can't bat, you know, in any team. They need to be able to contribute with the bat as well and contribute well.
Gilchrist had initially learned his trade behind the stumps at the Australian Academy under the best keeper of them all, the legendary Rod Marsh.
We worked hard on his keeping. At the end of the first year, he said, Rod, I think I might give his keeping away and concentrate on my batting. I said, that's not the way to go, Adam. I mean, you just always keep working on your keeping because, you know, your batting's that good. It's going to be very valuable if you can do both.
He thrives on having the two skills, the two strings to his bow.
He feels perhaps that one takes the pressure off the other. Gilly could have a bad day with the bat, it wouldn't affect him. If he had a bad day with the gloves, he'd really get down on himself.
I got the feeling that he wanted to gain the respect of the world for his wicket-keeping.
He'd spend 90% of his time on his wicket-keeping practice and about 10% of his time on his batting.
You know, his work ethic was second to none.
I vividly remember him taking some leg side stumpings off Shane Warne, you know, out of the rough, which is, you know, got to be tough for any wicket-keeper.
Got him, it's all beautifully done, beautifully done.
He'd always know how many catches or stumpings he'd taken off every bowler that played for Australia. He knew all those stats because he valued it so highly.
If people look back on the statistical record of Adam Gilchrist as a wicketkeeper, his glove rate, his strike rate, is the best of anybody in the world in Test cricket or one-day cricket.
In just 4 years since making his debut, Adam Gilchrist had become one of the leaders of the group, but without the typical Australian aggression of some of his predecessors.
He was perhaps not identified with that very abrasive edge to Australian cricket during that period. He's synonymous now with his decision to walk during the 2003.
I was certainly brought up to accept the umpire's decision, whether it's wrong or right. You know, and some days you get the good ones, some days you get the bad ones. So I know probably most Australians would be of that mindset. But Gilly was something different.
He's one of the very few leaders I know who can be one of the boys and still be a leader. Like, not many blokes can pull that off. I've been waiting for 25 years for him to drop his facade. It's too good to be true. He's too good a bloke. I've been waiting 25 years for him to be a bad bloke, but he's never dropped the facade, so that must be Adam Gilchrist.
Yet Gilchrist suffered his first serious dip in form in 2005, going 16 tests without making 100. The following year, he was part of an Australian side desperate to regain the Ashes. But by the time the teams met at Gilchrist's home ground in Perth for the third test, he was no longer assured of his place in the team.
I've never seen an individual at any level of the game net and prepare as badly as Gilly did that particular test series. He was horrible.
He could hardly hit it off the square, and he was just going through one of those stages where I think that he wasn't really, you know, in form.
Outside the change room, all dismissed, mind you, myself, JL and Ricky was saying, oh, if he gets a runs here today, it's just going to be an absolute miracle, you know?
I think it just got to a stage where he went out there, he just said, bugger it, and just started throwing the bat.
How good's that?
I think he relaxed in his mind where he just said, oh, I've got nothing to lose here, I'm just going to just see it and just hit it.
Catch! Goes, and goes, and goes.
It was like typical Gilly. He played the game as if he didn't care. It's like, mate, don't you know, you basically don't get runs here and you could well be out of the side. What was that, the Gilly? You know, he just went off from the start, just went off.
Goes again. That's even better.
He just, all of a sudden, you know, we're going to win the Ashes.
He used to say that he tried to approach batting as though he already had 20 on the board when he came to the wicket. And that's an incredibly confounding thing to confront when you're a bowler.
I wouldn't like to bowl to him in Perth with a ball coming onto the bat and bouncing. He can massacre you in 5 minutes.
That's the best of the lot.
I just remember footage of Freddie Flintoff and all the English boys. All they were doing was watching the ball sail over their head for another 6.
It was just almost this person possessed, and it just kept attacking and the ball kept sailing out of the ground.
Oh, that sounded superb. That is superb.
These balls that he was just crashing, they were going almost twice as far as any other balls that had been hit that particular game.
Gilchrist could take the game away from you in an hour, let alone a session. And in the course of it, make all previous calculations look foolish.
He's going through for the second, that's it. Magnificent.
He just timed everything so well.
The second fastest in the history of Test cricket.
Set that match up for us. And you know, we went 3-0 up in the Ashes series and sealed that series.
remember walking into the change rooms and I sat next to Haydos and Haydos goes, "Can you believe just what happened there? Can you believe what we've just said?" I go, "I can't believe what just happened."
I remember sitting there thinking, I've worked my backside off all day to try and get to 100, and he's made 100 in about 20 overs.
Mate, it was freakish. It was unbelievable. The best thing I've ever seen. Best thing I've ever seen on a cricket field. It was brilliant.
Scoring quickly had never been an issue for Gilchrist throughout his career. In the one-day format of the game, his aggressive batting at the top of the order revolutionised the sport.
Oh, that's a great, there we are. Gilchrist has arrived. That has gone back 50 rows.
You know, to open the batting with Gilly in one-day cricket was like, as a fan, pulling up the best seat in the house and watching him just desecrate any bowling. There was a freedom to our play, which was a beautiful part of it. There was almost an empty-minded approach to cricket.
Oh, that's a biggie.
I'll never forget playing at the SCG. I think he was on about 70 or 80 in a one-dayer, and I got 50 and got booed. It was embarrassing to almost take strike off him at times.
When Gilchrist arrived in the Caribbean for the 2007 World Cup, he was the key man to Australia's hopes of winning a third consecutive world title. Though despite helping Australia to the final once again, his performances suggested a return to indifferent form.
He had a very poor World Cup leading up to that, and obviously had a few problems, and he thought, you know, he'd try something new.
His bottom hand was dominating a bit, so he put a squash ball in his hand and hung on to the bottom of the bat, which just released the grip a little bit and meant the top hand would come in more.
You know, to think of actually putting a foreign object in your glove is just inexcusable, really. I mean, at an international level, to have a squash ball sitting in your glove, you'd have to be kidding.
To do that in a World Cup final takes a lot of courage.
It was amazing. It was an amazing feat and amazing thought process of Adam Gilchrist to get him out of that hole he was in.
Here you are, this is a World Cup final. This is the ultimate stage.
He started with the very first ball he faced. He absolutely crushed a drive for no run straight to mid-off. But I think it hit one of the fielder's hands and he walked over to Chaminda Vaas and said, "Oh no, I think we're about to get gillied."
And he just took the bit between his teeth straight away and just dominated them right from the word go.
Every opposition side knew that if Gilly had a day out, they'd lose.
Yeah, he just took the game away from us in that World Cup final, and that's what good players do to you.
He virtually just ripped the heart straight out of the Sri Lankan bowling attack, and he just threw it on the ground for everyone to feast on.
It's impossible to bat with a squash ball in your glove. That's what I think. And he still managed to score 150 runs with a squash ball in his glove. So it just goes to show how amazing a player Adam was.
An amazing innings that obviously set up the platform for us to achieve that win.
To win a third World Cup was because the way Gilly played in that final.
Following that 2007 World Cup triumph, Gilchrist set further records, this time with the gloves, becoming the wicket-keeper with the most dismissals in Test cricket. However, once again he was struggling for form and doubts were creeping in.
So Gilly played just that one more year. It was fantastic to have his services, but even just seeing him start to second-guess himself was quite painful. I'll never forget, actually, it was at Adelaide Oval. He dropped a ball, which he didn't think he should have dropped, and he went, "That's it, I've finished."
Adam Gilchrist bowed out of cricket in January 2008. In the few years he had played at the highest level, his impact had been enormous. The statistics show that in Test cricket he averaged 47 at almost a run a ball, whilst bagging 416 victims behind the stumps. But Adam Gilchrist was about so much more than just statistics.
He didn't really play for too long, but he has left his mark, which was big.
We always knew he was good enough to play Test cricket, but to be able to have that much of an impact on the game has been absolutely phenomenal.
he changed the keeper-batsman role. He wasn't the first one to go in and take it on, but out of all those players in that role, he was probably the best.
He was the guy who made it apparent that wicket keepers didn't just have to average in the 20s or 30s, but could average 40 or 50 in Test cricket as well. I think he's done wonders for the game. He's done something very, very bad to traditional wicket keepers who excelled as wicket keepers. He's come and he's destroyed most of their careers because he came out and said, you know, you don't have to be one-dimensional. You don't have to have only one discipline. And he went out and did that, and he created a whole new career for so-called wicket-keeper batsmen. Cricket has evolved because of Adam. That kind of mark on the game is, I think, very, very important.